Black people, we have to fight. Egungu, you see us. Oguo, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Dandara, you see us. Oguo, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Makandalo, you see us. Oguo, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Nana John, Henry Clark, you see us.
We have to fight. Let's go fight.
Black people, we have to fight. Yasatewa, you see us. We have to fight.
Let's go fight.
Black people, we have to fight. Marcus Garvey, you see us. We have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Nana Zumbio, you see us. We have to fight.
Let's go fight.
Black people, we have to fight. Nana Hannibal, you see us. Oguo, we have to fight. Let's go fight. Black people, we have to fight. Ancestors, you see us. We have to fight. Let's go fight.
We have to have the courage to construct our own reality. And that's what Garvey was talking about. Because he said he looked around, he didn't see what he thought should be there, and so what did he do? He didn't get depressed about it. He didn't get defeated about it. He said, I'm going to build the government that we need to have. Ooh. Where do you get that kind of boldness from? So we got to go all the way back to Garvey, who said he would come again. He said he would be here with us, no matter how long it took. And I'm telling you that the way he comes back is in our work. Not honoring him in words, pomp, and all of that stuff, but honoring him through doing what he did. How many of us have the courage to do that? The man took on the world for us and in our name. And then we come to Sodai. And in this presentation of the paradigm, I'm going to make this like what it is we want to reach. So Sodai is translated clear word in Dogana language. And I use it to mean that here we gain understanding. This is sight with understanding. And it is seeing beyond what just we think we see with this physical thing. It's seeing beyond that. And so we gain vision, because that's what vision is. With vision, you've got to be able to use the imagination. The imagination informed by the African spirit. And Brother Amos, who I work very closely with, was a good friend of mine. He taught me, and he would talk about imagination. Image a nation. Do you see? But that's got to be part of vision. To be a visionary, you got to see beyond this box here. You got to see beyond the ma'afa. You got to see what is it that our people rightfully should have, and that's what Garvey did. Garvey had a vision.
Tendai Mwadi, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe, Kudzai, Mudzimo, Mokolo. We give praises unto our great ancestors, Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodie, African power, and African liberation for all African people. Greetings and welcome, brothers and sisters, to this Mosiah session. We are in the month of Mosiah, so I greet you with the words, Garvey lives, Mosiah lives, honoring the birth month. And the month where we focus on the life and the legacy of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency, the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. This is the 19th of Mosiah, and by the way, brothers and sisters, for those who are confused by me calling Mosiah, yes, indeed, we renamed the month Mosiah because we are not the children of Augustus Caesar, brothers and sisters. We are the children of the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. So this is Ojima Day, Tuesday, the 19th of the month of Mosiah, and we are blessed to be able to engage in a Mosiah session on the topic of Ayiti and the imperative of nationhood. Ayiti and the imperative of nationhood. Many of you may be aware of the fact that the imperative of nationhood was in fact the title of our keynote address for our Mosiah opening ceremony at the beginning of the month. We are carrying that theme throughout the rest of the month. For those of you wondering, what shakara there? Where really the shakara? Okay, you know, they're your usual dwellings, right? You know what I mean? Brothers and sisters, I am blessed to be in my maternal homeland of Wadadli. Wadadli being the indigenous name, the name that the indigenous people of the island gave to what we know as Antigua, brothers and sisters. Antigua, Wadadli, the land of a great African by the name of Chief Taki, who is more popularly referred to as Prince Class or King Court, who led the organizing of an anti-slavery rebellion in the year 1736, brothers and sisters. It is also the birthplace of one Charles L. James. Charles L. James is, in fact, former President General of the UNIA-ACL, a successor of the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, and the man who was charged with the responsibility of, as President General, of writing the foreword for publishing of the course of African philosophy, brothers and sisters. And In the book Message to the People, which is in which the course of African philosophy is published by Baba Tony Martin, we have this particular forward opening by Baba Charles L. James. And I'm just trying to find it for you so I can read you a snippet of it. He says, as the only surviving graduate of the first class of the course of African philosophy, that is, it is important for me to protect the interest of those who preceded me into eternity, and knowing that there are forces that are trying to distort history, I hereby authorize Tony Martin, Dr. Tony Martin, who has been recognized and appointed as the authentic historian on the life and works of the Honorable Marcus Garvey by the Universal Negro Improvement Association, to publish the written document, the understanding that the right be preserved for future generations, which is in charge of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, founder. And so when we gather for our Mosiah session, brothers and sisters, we are honoring the life and legacy of not just Papa Garvey, but Baba Charles L. James, who encouraged us and gave us the duty and responsibility to protect this legacy against those who are trying to falsify history, brothers and sisters. And so before we go into our main discussion for this evening, for those who are not aware, every day for the month of Mosiah, we have affirmations that are housed in our Mosiah daily affirmations, word sounds of the prophet, by commentaries by our spiritual leader, Brother Leader Bandaka. And so our affirmation for day 19 is African race purity. Papa Garvey says, insist on a campaign of race purity. That is, doing everything moral and social within the race. Close ranks against all other races. It is a disgrace to mix your race with other races. To split up the race is unwholesome and does not tend to morally dignify the race. It would be a beautiful thing when we have a standard African race. Never allow any other race to preside over your affairs. I repeat, never allow any other race to preside over your affairs, because they will always say and do things to suit themselves and against your interests, though they profess the greatest friendship. If they swear on the Bible, don't believe them. If they swear, don't believe them. Their interest can never be yours, whether they be European, Asiatic, Jew, or whatever. Such is the wisdom of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Hail to the power of the word. Let us read our commentary given to us by our spiritual leader, Brother Bandaka. The world is divided into races, and our people are at the bottom of every economic and social stratum in every continent upon the earth. We are the most beleaguered and exploited of all peoples. Race purity, therefore, is a call. Race purity is therefore a call to end this plight by harnessing our best attributes towards complete redemption and exaltation of our race. We must own our cultural mediums, our arts, our music, our dance, our literature. We must use them to promote African race purity. We must ensure that we are the only beneficiaries of their economic viability. We must preserve them for our children. It is theirs to invest in, not ours to squander. Such is the wisdom of our spiritual leader, Brother Leader Bandaka. Hail to the power of the word. Tender brothers and sisters, we give thanks to the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe for the power of the words as spoken by our ancestors and leaders. And finally, we have children's memory verses every day for the month of Mosiah, and our children's memory verse for today: wake up Ethiopia, wake up Africa. Let us work towards one glorious end, a free and redeemed and mighty nation. So if you have children, you can note that down and get them to recite that throughout the rest of the day. Wake up Ethiopia, wake up Africa. Let us work towards the one glorious end of a free, redeemed and mighty nation. Tendamwade. Brothers and sisters, our topic for today is Haiti and the imperative of nationhood. Ayiti and the imperative of nationhood, brothers and sisters. The logic behind this as our subject for today is the fact that Haiti, the nation of Haiti, gave us a prime example of what it means to establish and engage in the development of a nation, in nation building. This particular example was a significant force in the inspiration behind the development of what becomes Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, universal African nationalism in its distinctions and related forms. And so we as Garveyites consider the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey to be among the most definitive examples of this nation building ideal in practice. And so we have to look at those who preceded him, those who inspired him, those who he learned from. Papa Garvey never just dropped from sky. Papa Garvey is not a man that developed of himself by himself. He was taught and carried inspiration from many, many, many jegnas, teachers, mwalimus, brothers and sisters. And history was among his greatest teachers, and legacy, Baba Toussaint Louverture, by his own testimony, was a great inspiration for him. And so to delve into such a subject, especially in the context of Garveyism, brothers and sisters, there are few more equipped people in our global African community to help us decipher this particular topic than our special guest for this evening or afternoon, depending on where you are, proceedings, brothers and sisters, than our brother Kimoni Yaw Ajani. He is a warrior scholar and an author of the great and illuminating book, The Afrikan Revolution in Ayiti. He is also happens to be a son of the soil of Ayiti, brothers and sisters. And so the Ayiti Revolution and Ayiti nation building is in our brother's veins. Let us now bring forward and greet our brother Kimoni Yaw Ajani. Tenawar, greetings, my brother Kimoni.
Before and Sakafet to my fellow Isans. Some of you may know my former name, really been Saint Hilaire, but of course, did away with my colonial name, and I'm in the process of getting it legalized. So, as we know, we are at war. Whether you identify as any of these other silly identities, we're all African people, Black people, and of course, we're seeing the results of many of us following white validation and the policies of our enemies. So, once again, Baba Shaka, it's an honor to be in this space, and it's an honor to build with our people.
Thank you very much for being here, my brother. It's an honor. And let me confess from the outset that oh, by the way, I believe that the response to Sakafet is muy bien. Much appreciated, my brother. So yeah, it's you know, I've always wanted to learn Haitian Creole. You know, it's one of them things. We'll see how we go with that. You know what I mean?
I have a funny story for that, Shaka. Absolutely, because you have to be honest. You know, I'm not fluent in Haitian Creole. I was born in the United States of murderers, so this is important for any of the Haitians born in the grounds of our enemies. You know, many of us are pushed away from our languages. I just want to encourage you, even if you're not fluent in Haitian Creole, always return to our language. It's never too late. You know, I also have to return.
Absolutely.
I got to return thanks to my teacher, Dr. Mazama. So I just want that small disclaimer. And once again, thank you, brother.
Absolutely. Let us salute Mambo Ama Mazama, who has graced us on this platform before, and give thanks for the inspiration that she gives to yourself and our people globally. It's important for us to recognize our teachers, brothers and sisters. Now, let me confess, my brother, I have not yet had the pleasure of actually reading your book. You know, there's so much studies, right? And I'm trying to be disciplined because, you know, like when you're reading a lot, there's always a book that comes up that you know you kind of put back what you was reading to incorporate this new book. You know what I'm saying? That's of, you know, importance, right? And then you never come back and finish the previous book where you did I read. So I'll try to be disciplined and systematic, you know what I'm saying, with my reading, but I will get around to reading your book. And for those who haven't read the book, let's just start by letting people know where they can purchase the book and how they can stay in touch with you. We will repeat at the end of the conversation as well.
Absolutely. And once again, I get no profits from the book. You know, it was published through Lexington Books, and of course I can also, or now Roman and Littlefield, but I can give you the main websites. And once again, my work is not perfect. I'm still learning, and I'm still a student of life and our ancestors. In fact, I actually picked up this book where I learned even more about Papa Dessalines. I have
Okay.
Avenged America, Jean-Jacques
Right.
Dessalines, and Haiti's Fight for Freedom by Julia Garvey. So, I definitely want to do a revision. And I should
Yes.
state that, just to state that many of us who do this work, it's important to humble ourselves and realize there's more work to do. So I have a lot of
Absolutely.
work to do in terms of improving.
Absolutely.
But I can drop the link as well in the chat.
Yeah, feel free to do so, and I'll make sure it gets shared as well. Brothers and sisters, that our brother just mentioned another book, a good book to read, which is not written by one of us, but it's very informative because of the extent to which it contains, first-hand documentation, reprints of first-hand documentation, is Beyond Slave Narrative. Forgive me because I'm forgetting who the author is right now, but it's a good book in terms of detailing the political ideology of Dessalines through his speeches and writing. Yes, very, very important, and something that we often don't get an insight into, because Dessalines is characterized to us as Dessalines the Ferocious, and he was Dessalines the Ferocious. Yeah, may we all hail Dessalines the Ferocious for all of the fear that he put into our enemies. We salute Dessalines the Ferocious for being ferocious. So we're not running from Dessalines the Ferocious, but we also want to hail up Dessalines the Emperor. Hail up Dessalines, the nation builder. Hail up Dessalines, the master organizer of a people. Hail up Dessalines, the master theoretician of the Haiti Revolution, my brother. And so if you could just give us a bit of an insight into what Dessalines was trying to build. The revolution was won in 1804. And from then on, Papa Dessalines had just under 2 years at the helm of the nation before he was eventually assassinated. And so, what kind of nation was Papa Dessalines trying to build?
I like to describe it similar to what our great ancestor Jedi Jemsu Jehuti, also known as Jacob Carruthers, as he wrote in, of course, Irritated Genie. I look at it
Yes,
as an electoral monarchy, much like Mali, where, of course, it wasn't hereditary, as you see with later with Christophe, where the line is
yes,
passed down to his children.
yes,
He, along with the Council of Elders and his wife, Empress Felicite, would choose the emperor of Haiti. In other words, he would
yes,
choose his successor because the seat of emperor is to be not only a defender of the African people in Haiti, but also a defender of all black people suffering under
right,
the institution of European chattel enslavement. Once again, he understood that we were at war against this white supremacist global system. Hence why, of course, he's tried to make coalitions with different Pan-African leaders in the Caribbean who are also dealing with the same beast of a system. And I think that context is important. And the main reason we call him Papa Dessalines is because when he's betrayed, he was never fully destroyed. He became deified, incorporated into the family of
absolutely,
Bogus. In fact, my family was
absolutely.
also from his hometown of Lati Bonite, which is, of course, in the north.
Ah,
And that context is important because many of our black generals are coming from the north, and there is some discrepancies when you deal with the south, especially what Petion tried to create.
yes, absolutely. But we'll get into Petion in a bit. And just to say, brothers and sisters, we have a video on Kimbunga Media that focuses on Lati Bonite in the 1980s and how the American government destroyed the rice industry. And Lati Bonite in Ayiti was one of the strongholds for the rice industry in Ayiti. And as our brother has just informed us, it is in fact the birthplace of Papa Dessalines. Yeah. And so that is important context right there. So you use the word, repeat the term, brother. Elective monarchy. Is that what you said?
I like to describe it as an electoral monarchy. And of course, I believe we need to return to our own languages to find a better proper term. Once again,
Right.
sadly, I was educated in a Western nation speaking English.
Yeah, my
But
brother.
luckily, I had my family. So, of course, I think Creole is very important. But
Absolutely.
once
And
again, we have to
don't
deal with the reality.
yeah, don't apologize, my brother. We're all using the colonizers' tongue at the moment, so it's all good for what it's useful for. But you liken that to Mali. Just delve into that comparison for a second. What do you mean that it's likened to the system of government in Mali, the
I look
Empire of
at what
Mali?
Sundiata Keita established with Mali when I was doing my research. I also noticed he also had a council of elders. In other
Right.
words, he was not, as we see in Western society, making sole decisions. And I think that context is important. You also have
Right.
elders, and of course, they have to consult. And of course, what's important in terms of the emperor is that he is protecting the people, the nation.
Yes.
In other words,
Yes.
he is a voice for the people. And I think that
Yes.
context is important. Oftentimes, you
Yes.
have many people with inflated egos who just want to be the head person in charge, as we're currently seeing
Yes.
in many of the countries ran by our enemies. Whereas when we
Yes.
look
Yes.
at the
Yes.
context of our nations, I think the best example is Burkina Faso, which I just returned because after Statistic International, we just had our 11th convention, and the Burkina Faso chapter welcomed us, and it really gave me a better insight in terms of what Ibram Traoré is establishing, and he's very similar to Papa Dessalines. Um,
Okay.
Aside from them being soldiers, I think it's important that once again they weren't enriching themselves. They are
Right.
serving the people. They are servants of the people.
Right. 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 Yeah, that's an important point. For two reasons. The first is that we Dessalines is often characterized as a mad authoritarian, yeah, in terms of his governance style, and so it's very important for us to look into and correct these fallacies, yeah. But it's also important for us to look in context of history. As Papa Omawale Malcolm X said, history is best qualified to reward our research. And remember that after revolutions, it is typical for the first cadre of leadership to stay in power for a particular period of time to stabilize the nation. This is the case even with the American Revolution, yeah, well over a decade. And I can't remember the exact number of years before they had an election, right? And before a constitution was written, and all kind of different thing in the United States of America, yeah. And that revolution took place in 1776. But it's also notable in relation to Dessalines about the elders that he had in power alongside him, and the council that he had, and how he ruled through that council. And so when you say that the emperor is designed for the purpose of protecting the nation, could you just speak to what the threats continue to be, just so we can understand Dessalines in his role as emperor? What did the threats continue to be on Haiti after 1804?
Well, once again, we have to realize that in Haiti, we not only defeated the French, we also defeated the Spanish, and then briefly, we had to start with the French, and then it was time for the French to get that work as well as the British. So once again, we had
And the Spanish. Don't forget the Spanish. Don't forget the Spanish.
I didn't forget the Spanish. I didn't forget the Spanish. Briefly
Yeah.
allied with them, but they also had to get that work. On
That's
top
right.
of the United States of murderers. Of course, we briefly want to make some deals because once again, we understand the suffering of African people, but once again, they understood that this new empire, and it's very important that we discuss it as an empire. It was first an empire, not a republic. And that context is very important, especially those of our enemies who like to push their notion of democracy.
Yes,
When,
yes,
of course,
yes,
we have
yes.
our own systems of governance.
Absolutely. All right. So then, let's speak now about the Constitution. As we know, the Haiti Constitution, written under the leadership of Papa Dessalines, was the first constitution in the Western Hemisphere to completely abolish slavery. Yes, no other constitution before that point had done so. Okay, so but speak about the importance of the Constitution, including that point and beyond that point, and its relevance to the nation-building effort in Haiti at that time.
The 1805 Constitution is absolutely important. I have to once again give credit to another important ancestor, Felix Bossuan Tournaire, who was, of course, the secretary of the Empire of Haiti, as well as, once again, Empress Felicite, because several clauses they have, which Empress Felicite also contributed, was that unite all children. All children were separated into the family, and any children who aren't claimed. In fact, Dessalines, of course, he had a lot of children, but of course, he made sure he legitimized those children. But most importantly, he split the population between those who are going to be soldiers to defend the nation and those who will work the land. So much so that everybody would have land in Haiti. And sadly, many elites in power, especially those coming from Jedu colors, didn't like that idea. These are some of the reasons why they killed him. Because once again, he understood the importance of food to feed the soldiers and the people, and the fact that the people had to economically be empowered. But also, we call it a revolution because once again, he completely dismantled the class system established in Saint-Domingue. You have to remember, it was the class system built in terms of race. At the top, you had Blanc, the rich whites, petit blanc, many of them who are jealous of the gender color. And of course, I don't like using the term mulatto. You
Well,
know,
I understand.
once again, I describe these people as our brethren, as African people, if they
Yes.
identify as such. The
Yes.
issue is that many of them are born free, and of course,
Yes.
many will be educated in France. So we also
Yes.
have to deal with those realities. But you also have those who didn't necessarily gain those sort of privileges. You know, I could think of
Yes.
Mary Jean Le Martiniere. You can think of
Yes.
Cecile Fatima, who had a Corsican
Yes.
father who also sold her mother and herself into enslavement. Many of them
Yeah.
were also engaged in maroonage, or what we call negmaon. You know, once again,
Yeah.
to leave the plantation completely to live on your own terms as African people. So once
Yes.
again, when we
Yes.
deal
Yes.
with these contexts, we can see that at the bottom are African people. But
Yes.
at all the movements, out of the grievances of Petit Blancs, Zendu Kalo will also have their grievances. The only one that was
Yes.
successful when we rose up were the black people at the bottom. The black
Absolutely.
people as well as those who freed themselves as Maoons, who come together to free our nation and the island.
My brother, you made a very good point, and I don't want people to lose it, which is the fact that one of the major aspects of Dessalines and the Constitution is how he distributed land to the people. All of the people of Haiti were granted land. Oh, my brother Jafrik Ayiti is in the building. I don't know if you're familiar with Jafrik Ayiti. I'm like, when I
Yes,
see
I
it
did. I
though,
saw his video on the core group. Absolutely important. He absolutely understands what's going on.
Right. So I feel I feel obliged, yeah, to invite him to contribute if he wants to, my brother, if you don't mind, yeah. Not right now.
Absolutely,
but
because he is more of an expert than me, brother, if I'm being quite honest. I'm a young
right,
scholar, but I
right.
absolutely appreciate his work in
My
terms of what's
brother,
going on. And he's a soldier on the ground.
I'm sure you are more knowledgeable than many of us, but it's all good to be a young scholar. I am a young scholar, so we give thanks, yeah. But my brother Jafrik Ayiti, if you do so wish to contribute to the conversation, just give me a signal and we'll make that happen. Definitely, my brother. When we have leading lights, you know, we have to give special dispensation to those who put in the work, brothers and sisters, yeah. So we give thanks to brother Jafrik
Dr.
Ayiti for
Albert,
joining us.
Pierre, once again, other warrior sisters and warrior brothers were getting the work done. So once
Absolutely,
again, I have to
absolutely,
highlight those two sisters, Dr. Bertu
absolutely,
Albert and Dr. Jemima Pierre. Excellent work they're doing right now. Because
absolutely. And do
these
do check
organizations
out
to get work done.
do check out our interview with Sister Jemima Pierre from last year, brothers and sisters. It's an excellent breakdown. But my brother Jafri Kaiti, let me just say, please don't feel obliged. Yeah, like don't feel obliged. Don't feel put on the spot. It's entirely up to you. And even if you don't decide to come and join us, just having you with us is an honor, my brother. Yeah, so give thanks for that. So yeah, back to this land issue that he distributed all the Africans on the island of Haiti had access to land, and in line with that, there was no European was allowed to come to Haiti and claim to be lord or master or owner of land. But an aspect of this that aspect of Dessalines began actually even prior to him becoming emperor, when he took over the leadership of the army after the demise of Toussaint Louverture. Under Toussaint Louverture, it is said that Dessalines had accumulated a significant amount of land and property under his own name. And the first thing he did when he assumed the leadership was to burn down all of his own property. That's right.
That's why we say that famous motto, you cut off the head and you burn down the house. And that's something that I was told by my parents. It's very important that, you know, especially now, what we're seeing is the collapse of the United States of Murderers, where I'm trapped in right now. You're starting to see that collapse. And of course, I'm waiting for our black people to really organize so we can burn down this house.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So yeah, it's important for us to look at. You spoke about how Dessalines attacked the class stratification in Haiti, and that is the definitive example of attacking the class stratification. He was a leader of an army that accumulated land, and the first thing he does when he becomes a leader is the primary leader is to burn down his own, like to demonstrate that he's casting his lot entirely with the masses of the people in Haiti. You mentioned something there, my brother, something that we often don't look at, which is the role of the so-called Maroons in Haiti. And feel free, I mean, but if you are able to shine any light upon the role that the so-called Maroons played in the development of Haiti as a nation, because my instinct suggests that it's a far greater role than is often given credit.
Absolutely a greater role, especially in terms of what happened with the Tainos. Some of them were the first to engage in maroonage on the island When you look at the
Right.
case of Cacique Enriquillo, Enriquillo is an interesting case I read about in terms of him
Right.
not only losing power, but once again running away to reestablish his kingdom, but also those
Okay.
first group of enslaved African people we, of course, invited to intermix with. So once again, we are able to gain deep knowledge in terms of our own grounds of how we can deeply connect with nature. So of course, it's no surprise for us to really organize ourselves, but also to do on our own terms. Not only that, we have to remember that many of the black populations were African people who still remember their societies in African societies, whether they're coming from Dahomey, Oyo, whether they're coming from the Congo, the Ashanti. Once again, they were still intact with their own African languages, with their own epistemology, ontology, and axiology. And that context
Right.
is important, especially what I'm reading
Right.
about Papa Dessalines. Once again, Papa Dessalines refused to speak European languages. He only
Yeah.
wants to be
Yeah. Yeah.
connected with, once again, Haitian Creole and his own African Congolese languages. So I think that's
Yes.
important, whether we're learning Twi, whether we're learning Haitian Creole, whether we're learning the Jamaican. And of course, my brother Talo Adodo doesn't use patois for various reasons. But once again, it's very important that we are connected to these languages. When you speak another
Hmm.
language, you have a different way of thinking, a different psychology. So once again, we are beginning to return to our own African psychology, even myself.
Right.
And once again,
Okay.
I'm a victim of going through special education here in the United States of murderers, and also once again losing my mother tongue.
Absolutely. And another day, my brother, I would love to bring you back to speak about that, your experience in special education, and how you overcame that to become a doctor. Yeah, that's extremely important. But that's another conversation for another time, my brother. But give thanks for your efforts and your work. And so we talk about nationhood, and there were different throughout the revolution. In fact, there were different ideals of nationhood on the table among our people in Haiti. And those differences became manifest during the time of Dessalines as Emperor of Haiti. And could you just give a breakdown of what the different conceptions of nationhood were in Haiti under Dessalines, and which camp Dessalines would have sat in?
So of course, Honorable Swanton and Dessalines, once again, they understood that once again, you didn't want necessarily a European monarchy with a nobility. In fact, he is stated to state that only me and my wife, Empress Felicite, are the only nobility. That context is very important because once again, you still had a population of gens du couleur as well as elite black generals who want to seize all the land and seize all the power and simply replace the French, which was
Yes.
not the idea or vision Dessalines, as well as many of his childhood friends that joined the revolution, had for the nation, as well as his mentor Toyo Mantu, who raised him when his mother died giving childbirth. So I think that
Mhm.
context is important because once again, they want to reconstruct the African society based on our own values, which is why I like to compare it similar to Mali.
Right, right. And so what? So what? The so-called people of color. What kind of nationhood were they representing? You're saying that they wanted to basically replace the French.
Yes, and they want a republic where they would have, of course, a senate or rather a council of gens du couleur, and of course, at the time they want to have Henry Christophe as a figurehead.
Right,
But once again, he will be a puppet. Most of the
right,
citizens be that council or legislator
right,
of gens du couleur. In other words,
right.
the gens du couleur want to replace the French, and of course,
Okay,
black
I
people would
understand.
still be at the bottom.
I understand. And so Dessalines giving everybody land would have been a direct, because bearing in mind what land was really the primary access to wealth in Haiti and any agricultural nation of that era before or since. And so when Dessalines says everybody has access to land, it's a very, very serious change, yes, to the colonial dynamic, and also a very serious attack on the system of governance that the so-called people of color would have wanted to institute. And so, not to dwell on this aspect too much, but we understand that Papa Dessalines was assassinated in 1806. What were the circumstances that led to his assassination?
Well, I actually gained some new information when, of course, I have to highlight the great elder Mama Bayina Bello. I read her book, 21 Facts of
Absolutely.
Dessalines. And in fact, I
Yes.
read several interesting statements about how he was assassinated. One was,
Right.
of course, he was able to escape the attack when he traveled, of course, to the south, particularly to unite the Spanish after the island. I heard that
Okay.
he necessarily wasn't killed and actually escaped. But then, of course, the Pope, because we have to also remember, I forgot to mention this, he also
Right.
removed the power of the Catholic Church to allow the
Ah,
freedom of religion because he
very
understood that
important.
many people practice their own African spiritual systems, especially when you
Yes.
look at Ice and Voodoo or Voodoo. I think that
Yes.
context is very important when we think about how much power the Catholic Church was seizing. And in fact,
Yes.
Leslie Desmond, who writes Faces of the Gods, he actually discusses this. And
Yes.
oftentimes we confuse it with syncretism, but it's not truly syncretism. You know, when
Yes.
you
Yes.
state
Yes.
this incredible, it assumes that there's an equal power balance between the two religions, but that wasn't the case. So I did forget to mention that. But once again, that's an aspect that we have to tie in on top of land and as well as the produce that we produce. Whether we talk about cochon, which is of course the name of a pig, whether we talk about cabli, poisson, which is fish. Once again, these are major staples. So once again, land is
Yes.
important in the aspect.
Yeah, that's the issue of the Catholic Church is extremely important, especially when we consider the fact that the Catholic Church were brought back in the 1860s, I believe, to take over all of the schools, the entire education system in Haiti. Yeah, so again, we're seeing the desire of Dessalines to be completely free of alien domination. Not to say that he never had relationships with these criminal aliens, because he did, but the relationship was not going to be one of domination. Yes, and so getting rid of the Catholic Church is definitive in that regard, especially because the Catholic Church is in Haiti now doing a lot of damage. Yeah, okay, so we understand that, and then what happens after Dessalines either disappears or is assassinated? What
Apparently,
happens
of
in
course,
Haiti?
Marina Bello, and of course, she took time to talk to elders who are over 100 years old.
Right.
What's interesting is that the Pope tried to establish a secret meeting, and it stated that Dessalines is poisoned during this particular meeting. So once again, I have
Yeah.
to continue to read and look deeper because once again, I may not get the
Right.
accurate facts, but there are different
Yes.
explanations in terms of how he's assassinated. And we also
Right.
know about Didi Bizil, who, along with many of the women on the island, gathered different body parts. It actually reminds me of the
Mhm.
story of Asar, how he was assassinated. And of course, they had to gather his body parts, and of course, he is resurrected. So once again, there's a
Yes.
deep similarity when we look at what happened to Papa Dessalines, and I don't think that's
Right.
a mistake.
My brothers and sisters, we're speaking to Brother Kimoni Yaw Ajani, and it is one of our Mosiah sessions. We are honoring the life and legacy of the most honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Our theme for the month is nationhood, the imperative of nationhood. And so we are looking at the examples of African nationhood prior to Papa Garvey that would have inspired the development of the nationhood ideal within Garveyism. I mentioned Charles L. James earlier, brothers and sisters, former President General who is born in my maternal homeland of Wadadli, Antigua, where I currently am situated, brothers and sisters, and him writing the foreword to the course of African philosophy published by Baba Tony Martin. I'm actually connected to our Baba because he was a teacher of Baba Senghor Jawara Baye, who's also a former President General and current Assistant President General of the UNIAAC or RC 2020. And Baba Charles L. James taught Baba Senghor the course of African philosophy, and Baba Senghor taught me the course of African philosophy. So I'm in fact a graduate of the course of African philosophy. That's my lineage in that regard. And I say that to just read an aspect of the course of African philosophy that speaks to this particular topic. And then we're going to go on to the details of post-Dessalines Ayiti. He says, no race, Papa Garvey says, no race is free until it has a strong nation of its own system of government and its own order of society. Never give up this idea. Let no one persuade you against it. It is the only protection for your generation and your race. Papa Garvey says nationhood, free, independent nationhood, a nation of our own, is the only protection for your generation and your race. Hold on to the idea of an independent government and nation as long as other men have them. Never be satisfied to live. Sorry, I lost my place here. Never be satisfied to always live under the government of other people, because you will always be at their mercy. Visualize for yourself and your children and generations unborn your own king, emperor, president, your own government officials and administrators who look like you, brothers and sisters. And so we can see how that statement from Papa Garvey ties in exactly with the vision that Jean-Jacques Dessalines had for Haiti, as explained by our brother Kimoni. But I did neglect to read actually the first paragraph of this subchapter on Black nationalism. And he says the culmination of all the efforts of the UNIA-ACL must end in Negro independent nationalism on the continent of Africa. That is to say, everything must contribute towards the final objective of having a powerful nation for the African race. African nationalism, he uses the word Negro, is necessary. It is political power and control, brothers and sisters, taken from the course of African philosophy, also known as Message to the People. And so with that context, my brother, let us go forward to the time of Christophe and Pétion. What happens under Christophe and Pétion?
So as I mentioned before, Pétion had the idea in the South to establish a republic. But once again, they would have a legislative council full of mulattoes who will really be making the decisions. But of course, Christophe, they wanted him to be the figurehead or the leader. But of course, or a black figurehead or somebody in blackface, when in reality, the country is controlled by those of color who identify with their former masters, or of course, many of their fathers who are still French. And of course, this is by design. Christophe, of course, the right hand of Papa Dessalines, knew better, and of course, once again, took control of the North. And remember what I stated before, many of the great black generals are coming from the North. So as a result, he established a kingdom, and of course, the kingdom would flourish. He made great economic improvements. We could talk about La Citadelle. We could talk about, once again, the currency that you create for Haiti, as well as the numerous trade deals that you established. But once again, that context is important, and I don't want to diminish the role of Pétion either. Once again, Pétion also made initiatives, whether we talk about Colombia or many of these Latin American countries, who, of course, he also supported during their fight against Spain. And, of course, the deal was that they would destroy their institution of enslavement. So, once again, the world, particularly the Americas, owes a debt to the Empire of Haiti, as well as the former Kingdom of Haiti and the Republic of Haiti. But nonetheless, that divide is real.
I appreciate the nuance that you provide in relation to Pétion. Although, you know, most of us, our inclination is more Dessalines and Christophe than it is Pétion, for good reason. We shouldn't deny some things, and we don't understand for that Pétion, I believe also Christophe, instituted universal education for children in the Republic and the kingdoms of Haiti, brothers and sisters. I feel, Kimoni, you frozen?
Yes, brother, I could hear you. You're just breaking up a little, but I can still hear you, brother. I think we disconnected real briefly, but I'll wait so you can reconnect. Peace, family. As you know, my brother Shaka is in Tigua. So, of course, currently the weather isn't too good. But to answer his question, absolutely in many ways. And I want to further elaborate on this, particularly when we look at the divide. And I want to highlight that even the North wasn't excused from its faults. Christophe also established a nobility, something that Dessalines would never bring about. So, despite my critiques of the South, there are also some critiques of the North.
Absolutely, my brother. Sorry, I chipped out there. You know, I like.
I let the people know.
Yes, good thanks. Just repeat what you were just stating there, so I can catch up.
Absolutely, and I don't want to seem that Christophe doesn't have any critiques. Although Christophe is my man, in terms of what he's able to implement. But there are some critiques because he established a nobility. And once again, that's a model that follows. Once again, the Western construction of how they run their nations or their kingdoms. So I do want to highlight that. And one thing I forgot to mention when you were talking about the great ancestor Marcus Garvey is that he also was very much influenced by Papa Dessalines. When we look at the Pan-African flag or the RBG flag, particularly when I discussed the first flag of the Empire of Haiti, which is black and red. Once again, to highlight the motto of famous motto, Liberté ou la mort, freedom or death. Also, once again, the black people, as well as the blood that we sacrifice for freedom. So once again, I have to highlight Marcus Garvey for having the genius to give us our own flag. And once again, I don't identify as Haitian American. America comes from Martin Wenzimüller, the German photographer, inspired by Amerigo
Yes.
Vespucci. Once again, America's a colonial project. So once again, I'm not dissing those who call themselves Black Americans, but understand that we're African people. And once again, I
Absolutely.
won't identify with our enemies, and I just want to make that very clear.
Yeah, thank you for raising the flag. I did mean to ask you about that earlier in terms of the black and red and the blue and red, and what that represents politically. But yeah, in the Al-Qaeda revivalist movement, we've been making that link between the red and black flag of Dessalines and the red, black, and green of Papa Garvey for quite some time. And the circumstances under which the flag was chosen, the red, black, and green flag were chosen, are not like well explored. I don't know if there's any specific notes of that particular meeting in which that flag was decided. But either way, either direct inspiration or the spiritual vibration, that red and black theme, made its way 100 years later, over 100 years later, into Papa Garvey and the Garvey movement. So yeah, give thanks for that. So we say that there were nuances in terms of Pétion and Christophe. What did they represent differently in relation to their stance towards the enemy, towards France and Britain and America and Spain?
I like to describe it as white validation, a term I took from my teacher as well as my spiritual mother, Dr. Ama Mazama, when she talks about cognitive hiatus and white validation syndrome. And once again, you have to identify that Pétion was raised and educated in France with his French father. In fact, he joined the expedition with André Rigaud during the war in the South. Of course, we know during the war in the South, they lost to Toussaint Louverture, who was the governor general, and they fled to France. And they would join Leclerc in the expedition to re-enslave the entire African population. So once again, when we look at some of his ideologies, we know that sadly he had a white validation ideology, or what Baba Carruthers or Baba Jensu Jahuti describes as the defense of liberty.
Right.
Whereas Dessalines didn't necessarily have that problem. Once again, this is somebody who's connected to his own African epistemology. Someone, once again, didn't necessarily want to ally himself with white ideologies. In fact, he constantly refused and revoked the French language. So once again, this shows that he had a theological African clarity of who he is and what the people need to do to return to themselves. And once again, we have to understand this is not an easy task.
Yes, sir, absolutely. Just to clarify, are you saying that both Pétion and Christophe suffered from some level of white validation syndrome?
Absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Pétion more than Christophe, of course.
Right. Okay. So I was gonna say, because people might be able to compute what you're saying in relation to Pétion, but they may not in relation to Christophe. So please explain how did this manifest in the form of Christophe? I think you mentioned the establishment of a monarchy. Are there any other examples of how this might have manifested in him?
Other examples also include, once again, the return of the Catholic Church.
Right.
And I think we have to also grapple with that in terms of religion.
Right.
I have family members who are Catholic as well as family members who are Christian. I myself grew up in a Christian household and was colonized for quite some time until I went away for school and really began to learn our history and learn about our people and the larger examples of African people and their histories. And I think it's necessary to grapple with that because many of us are still practicing the religions of our enemies. And once again, I'm not trying to bash our people. I understand how complicated it is because, especially here in the United States of Murderers, one of the institutions for many Black people to unite, sadly, is the church or the mosque. Unless you, of course, are connected with those institutions established by many of our ancestors and those who are practicing Yoruba or our African spiritual systems. But once again, it's very complex because for many family members, they're trying to survive, they're trying to find a space so that children have morals and principles. But there is something to be said in terms of the white validation that is instilled when you are practicing the image of a white god.
Absolutely. Brothers and sisters, our brother Kimoni Yaw Ajani has a book entitled The Afrikan Revolution in Haiti. Please check out the site here and acquire that book, brothers and sisters. Please do acquire the book. The link is in the chat. The link is in the chat. So let's go to the time now, my brother, of Jean-Pierre Boyer, where things began to change very drastically. What did Boyer represent as a leader of Haiti, and what kind of nationhood was he trying to establish?
You actually remind me of what Leslie Alexander wrote in Fear of a Black Republic. And
Yes,
once again, this was a time where the island was, in some cases, depending on who you talk to, was united. And of
yes,
course, this is before I get to
yes.
1861, which was
Hmm.
another race war. And once again,
Yes,
shout out to Culture Cole. Once again,
yes,
they actually had a deep discussion of this, particularly once again the unity between Aysans and Dominicans to
right,
once again kick out the Spain who were trying to re-annex them. But sadly, due
yes,
to many Dominicans who had a fear of Haitian rule, many of them were asked for the return to Spain, along with U.S. involvement. So it is
absolutely.
quite complex, but
Hmm.
there's a deep connection when you look at what Boyer's established. And once again, my knowledge of Boyer is still very limited, so I have a lot more
Right,
work to do. So I do have to
absolutely.
put a veto in that comment.
Well, one thing we do know is that it was under Boyer that the French debt was instituted. That the French came
Absolutely.
back with hundreds of guns trained on the island. And I know there are some debates among some brothers and sisters about the extent to which Boyer was coerced into accepting this debt agreement. Um, and whilst I accept personally, you can let me know your thoughts on this. Whilst I accept personally that Boyer was entirely Francophile in his inclinations, and given to be an agent of French imperialism, I think that when they come with like 300 and something cannons trained on the island, I think that speaks for itself. You know, however much Boyer was inclined towards the French anyway, I think the fact that they came with so many cannons, it speaks for itself in terms of what their intentions were and the extent to which they thought that what they were trying to do was going to be successful without that level of military incursion. What's your thoughts on that?
Baba Shaka, I'm happy you mentioned cannons because I was going to go there.
Hmm.
Although, of course, in my idea is that he would be a strong leader and, of course, not be afraid to go to war. But once
Yes.
again, the threat of cannons and those European weapons is very real. In fact, it reminds me of Chuezu and Bikwe when he writes The West and the Rest of Us, White Predators, Black Slavers, and the African Elites. When he also
Hmm.
discusses many cannons would literally fire upon many of our African nations, whether we talk about the
Yes.
Ashanti Kingdom or
Yes.
Dahomey. This is a
Yes.
reality we have to grapple with, and many hands are forced,
Absolutely.
as I like to say.
Absolutely.
Although,
Absolutely.
once again, my stance, if I was in that position, is to fight to the end. I'd rather die than to fall to extortion, as I like to call it. That's exactly what it was, extortion.
So can we speak to the impact that this debt and the premiership of Boyer and those who followed him for the most part had in terms of moving away from the ideal of nationhood that Baba Dessalines was trying to institute? What did this particular period? How did this particular period negatively impact that ideal of nationhood?
Well, you have a series of chaos. And I state that because this is prior to our discussion of the 1915 U.S. occupation. Particularly
Yes,
different presidents. There were 7 assassinations prior to that. Before
yes, yes.
before it's
The
escaping my
occupation.
name. Before the occupation, but there was a president
Yes.
who also was assassinated, which is very similar
Oh,
to
I know who you're talking
Kimoni
about. You're
Yaw.
talking about I forget his name, but this is the grandson of Dessalines or the great grandson or something. I'm forgetting his
Yes,
name, but yeah,
it escapes me. It'll come back to me.
yes,
Um,
yes, yes,
but that context is important for us to discuss.
yes,
Particularly how many of these leaders will also, hire many Kako fighters. Many of the Kakos will also fought during the revolution. But
yes,
this is something we're seeing right now in real time when they discuss the quote unquote gang situation. And really, is many people trying to not necessarily seize power, but fight and really deal with the outside imposition. Right now, you have
right,
Blackwater mercenaries, the same people who cause chaos in Iran, the same individuals who cause chaos in the Congo. And sadly, you have different factions, as I like to describe it. Different
right.
factions trying to seize power. So once again, this is the idea environment for many of our European powers. It's an environment of chaos where you could constantly exploit the resources from a particular nation that's impoverished and dealing with internal fighting. That's how I see it. But it was
Um,
something
um,
that gradually happened over time. Particularly when we look at 2004, see that there was an opportunity for us to truly get ourselves together. But there has been series of constant attacks as I see it.
Our brother Jeffrey Kaiti has correctly guessed that the person that we're trying to think of is Cincinnatus Leconte, who was the great grandson of Dessalines. Yeah. Is there anything you want to say about him in particular?
Not necessarily, because as I mentioned before, my knowledge is very limited.
Right.
I am familiar with Zobo Bobo,
Mm-hmm.
who fought in the first Taco War against the U.S. Marines, as well as Charlemagne Pelat. So
Yes.
I think that context is important in terms of those who try to refuse or fight the imposition, particularly when
Absolutely.
we look at the U.S. occupation, 1915 to 1936, where once again the U.S. also changed the Constitution. That clause where
Yeah.
no foreigner can own land in Haiti would be changed.
Yes.
So very early on, we could see there has been attempts to work on Haiti, much as Haiti is
Absolutely.
still being worked on to this day.
It's necessary to also note that the American government invaded and occupied Haiti at the behest of Wall Street corporate leaders and bankers, in their interests, effectively. Yeah, and occupied it for the better part of 20 years. My brother, you wanted to speak on this period of the 1860s, and the fractures between Haiti on the one hand and what becomes known as the Dominican Republic on the other, and you've got some insights into that in relation to race versus nationhood that you'd like to share. Please go ahead.
Absolutely. And just real briefly, once again, you're also dealing with levels of white validation.
Right.
Once again, you also have a big black population in the Dominican Republic. Many of them were also suffering under similar guise. So once again, when you look at 1861, there was a unity.
Yeah.
There was another race war, as I like to describe it. When
Mhm.
once again, Spain is trying to annex the Dominican Republic. So once again, there was a brief unity. But sadly, many of the elites in the Dominican Republic had this
Yeah.
unnatural fear of ice and rule, as if we're the ones imposing or enslaving our Dominican brothers and sisters, which isn't the case. And
Yes.
the main reason I state that is when you look at the original Trinity or Trinitario, we know that many of them, once again, were children of Spain. So once
Yes.
again, that
Yes.
context is something that we have to grapple with, similar to the gens du color, free people of color.
Absolutely. And that particular fracture still affects both nations to this
To
day.
this day.
And it's necessary to note because our nation for today was about African race purity, and if to a significant degree, the fractures politically between Haiti and the Dominican Republic can be said to be basically down to confusion about the concept of race and who is not who is and who is not our people. Yes. And quite definitively, who we consider to be our own and who we consider to be descendants of is the defining factor in terms of the political ideology we adopt and the kind of nation we want to build. So Africans in Haiti who are proud of their Africanness seek to build a nation in the image of their Africanness, and Africans and others who are in the so-called Dominican Republic are allegiant to a Spanish lineage, and so they build a nation that is reflective of that allegiance to a Spanish lineage, brothers and sisters. Yeah, so this is entirely important when we speak about Papa Garvey and nationhood. My brother, I'm going to ask you one last question, and I'm going to open up for brothers and sisters in the chat if they want to come through, and we'll give it, let's say, 15-20 minutes. Is that okay?
No problem. Let's build.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So just now, in terms of us today, and well, first of all, in terms of Papa Garvey himself, how do you see the nationhood ideals of Haiti showing up in the Garvey movement and the universal African nationalist philosophy of Garvey? During his time or after that, how do you see that happening? And what does the Haitian Revolution have to teach us about nation building in today's world?
I see it through our organization, Afrocentricity International. As you know, Garvey was a major foundation for Afrocentricity International, particularly our motto, unity is our aim and victory is our destiny. In fact, we believe in this idea of a United States of Africa, because once again, when our motherland is empowered, when our motherland is a force, African people, wherever they are, will be defended, will be empowered. And once again, we will have an economic bloc that will protect us all. So once again, nationhood is essential. We're seeing that right now when we see in Burkina Faso and African nations doing away with their former colonial masters, as I like to describe them. So once again, nationhood is essential. Once again, France is weak. The United States of Murderers is weak, and it's showing with many of the actions they're doing now to consolidate power based on race. That's something we can't
Absolutely.
forget.
Absolutely. Feel free to share any of your reflections on visiting Burkina Faso, the land of upright people.
It was much like when I visited Haiti for the first time in 2017 when Mama Mazama brought me home, as well as the following year in 2018 when she brought me to Benin. It was transformative. Of course, you hear things that are happening in Burkina Faso, but when you're on the ground, seeing what the
Yes.
people are doing, how much they love Ibram Touré. In fact, we even met the brother of Thomas Sankara, Valentine Sankara, and he even himself said that Ibram Touré is the second coming of his brother. And
Okay.
it's very inspiring to see how they're building the institution and seizing their resources to build their own economic bloc and their own economic power. We got to visit Bobo Dioulasso as well as Ouagadougou. And one of the challenges is that in both cities they have their own African dialect on top of the colonial language of France. So once again, one of the challenges is to find one African languages they could adopt and do away with French. But once again, they're doing some amazing things. And anybody who has a chance to visit the memorial of Thomas Sankara, you have to visit, as well as the other sites. Please visit Ouagadougou and Bobo Dioulasso, as well as
Absolutely.
connect with the people. Once again, this is a people who won't make the same mistake as they did with Thomas Sankara. They didn't understand the importance of Thomas Sankara, according to his brother Valentin Sankara.
Yes.
And
Yes.
once again, now the people are aware and they're aware of the attacks, and they're not going to make the same mistake. And we stand with our brothers and sisters in the revolution that's occurring on the ground in Burkina Faso, and they will
Absolutely,
achieve
my
victory.
brother. Brothers and sisters, we're going to keep the lines open for the next 15-20 minutes. If you have a question for our brother Kimoni Yaw Ajani, feel free to type it in the chat at Kimbunga Media if you want your question or comment to be read out, or you can click the link in that is in the chat right now if you want to come live and interact with our brother directly. Do remember that I said 15-20 minutes, so do click that link now. Don't wait until 90 minutes time and decide to go and click the link, because we're not gonna bring it through. All right. So we've got 15-20 minutes for some discussion, my brothers and sisters. So yeah, click the link. And I just want to share, brothers and sisters, that yesterday our brother mentioned the importance of going to see the monument erected to our ancestors. And yesterday I took my son and my queen to visit the memorial to Prince Class, who is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, the organizer of a planned rebellion in 1736. And the importance of that rebellion, much like, and by the way, interestingly enough, I hail my paternal homeland is Jamaica and my maternal homeland is Antigua. And in both places in the 1700s had rebellions that were organized by men who were called Chief Taki. Yes. Jamaica in 1760, Chief Taki's rebellion, that actually kicked off. Whereas Chief Taki in Antigua, Dudley, more popularly referred to as Prince Class or King Court, his particular plot was betrayed by an African who was not only enslaved in body but in mind, and so he was captured before he and the leaders who he was planning with had the opportunity to really wage the rebellion, and it was a very good plan that they had. But when he was captured, he never tried to deny anything. He admitted, yes, I plan to kill the whole Aono and establish a free African nation on this island of Wadadli and Antigua. So we went to visit his monument yesterday and just salute the ancestor. And my son was reading the story of Prince Class, Chief Taki, as it was rendered on the monument itself. It's very important for us to remember our ancestors, brothers and sisters. Very, very important. And interestingly enough, that monument is along the route or just off the route for Carnival in Antigua, which is celebrated around Emancipation Day. So, there's some serious spiritual energy around, I'm saying, we are dealing with few things. Brothers and sisters, we're receiving your questions or comments for our brother, Kimoni Yaw Ajani. And if you have them, you can type them in the chat. Bigging up Sister Kenya over there in Sierra Leone. Yes, indeed. Branch president of the UNIA ACL, indeed, in Freetown. So we give thanks for our sister over there in Freetown. So if you want to ask a question, please at Kimbunga Media. So I know you your comment or question read out, brothers and sisters. You want your comment or question read out. My brother, in relation to the flag that you mentioned earlier, where do you stand on the flag? I know there are some people who are vehemently against the red and blue flag, like just against it completely. And you know, between different presidents of Haiti, people have brought back the red and black. Controversially, it was brought back. I say controversially because of the fact that most of us as revolutionary Pan-Africanists don't really regard Papa Doc in high esteem. But for some, they thank him for bringing back the red and black flag. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. And at least some of the stances that he took, most would consider his son to have been an out and out sellout. But there are some who suggest that there are some nuances where Papa Doc is concerned. I'm not overly convinced myself, but I get where some of them are coming from with some of their arguments. Where do you stand on Papa Doc and the red and black flag of Haiti? Do you embrace the red and blue as well?
I don't embrace the red and blue, but I understand the context, especially when we talk about the flag of the indigenous army and independence flag. When Dessalines strips the white from the French flag, he wants to show the unity between free people of color and the black population. So I think that context is important to highlight and honor. But at the same time, when we talk about nationhood, what was our flag as a nation? We have to embrace the black and red. And once again, my family grew up there in Duvalier. Shout out to my uncle Joseph Martel and Joseph Eric Saint-Hilaire. They sat down and along with my cousin Rachel, they had a discussion of when they grew up in the regime of Francois Duvalier. And it was quite interesting, for them, they say that, listen, he kept the country clean. The son, of course, they see as incompetent because he read the country as a celebrity. But for them, yes, he was a strong man, but, you have to remember, not only was he a Vodun practitioner, he's a doctor.
Yeah.
So, and not only that, we understand that their paramilitary force, many of them got training from the U.S. in the School of Americas, along with Trujillo. Rafael Trujillo in the Dominican Republic. So it's complex. And once again, I understand that Duvalier also killed a lot of his opponents or enemies, Tonto Mokuts. But once again, we also understand how did he get that idea when we look at some of the training and grounding. But also, he didn't necessarily bend over to the U.S. In fact, there were some conflicts for those who are familiar.
But yeah. Absolutely. Complex history, brothers and sisters. Maybe one day we'll do a session on Papa Doc. Specifically, because I have been guilty of charging him with being little more than a stool pigeon for American empire for the most part, as somebody who was not acting in the interest of the people of Haiti. But it is necessary to engage the different perspectives, especially from our people in Haiti as well. To strengthen and or challenge some of our perspectives. So we'll do that on another day, my brother. Right. It appears that we're not our people are sufficiently impressed with your rendition that they don't have any questions to ask.
I still need work. If I'm being honest, I want people to understand this. Like, I'm a student of life, and
my brother, you're being too humble. We all need work, and so you're doing the work, and the reason why we have you here is because of the work that you're actually doing. So don't apologize, my brother. You know what I'm saying? We're all works in progress. I am too. You know what I'm saying? So we give thanks for whatever stage you are at, and whatever you are able to share with us as a result of that stage that you are at. I'm gonna just for the sake of being thorough and respectful, offer our brother Jeffrey Ayiti one more opportunity if he wants to come through. Feel free, my brother. As I said, feel free to decline respectfully. It's entirely up to you. There's no obligation, but we are willing to hear from you if you so wish to share anything. My brother.
His articulation, real quickly, if you guys didn't get to look at the auto initiative and discussion on the core group, Brother Chafrik presentation was absolutely amazing, and I just want to highlight that if you guys get a chance to check that out on YouTube. That was my first introduction, and I'm really impressed with the brother's work, and I would love to speak with our elder and also learn from his perspective.
Our brother is so brilliant that I watch him sometimes, even when he's speaking entirely in Iceland Creole, and I don't understand nothing. Taking the vibes, you know what I mean? As my brother, brothers and sisters, we've had the opportunity to interview our elder brother many times on Kimbunga Media as well. So do check him out in relation to the current situation in Haiti. Very insightful. Was you going to say something, my brother?
Oh no! I'm in complete agreement. Complete agreement.
Right. Good facts. So I do want people to buy your book, and the link is here once again, brothers and sisters. It's in the chat. So just give our people that. What do you focus on in your book, my brother?
Absolutely. And some of you might be curious in terms of why I have a K in Africa. Even when you look at Ice and Creole, we use for a hard C sound, we replace the C with K. And this is consistent whether you look at Kikongo, Twi, Wolof, Ice and Creole, like for example, if I were to ask your name, Kizaruele or Kinahu, we don't spell that with a C, we spell that with a K. So it's a linguistic connection, but also the notion of Pan-Africanism and nationhood. That's why I use the K in Africa. And the main reason I call it the African Revolution and Ayiti, even amongst our people, there some, I would say, a small number who don't identify with the African identity, which is heartbreaking. So much so that some are trying to say they're Latin American or a similar situation with what we're seeing here in the United States of murderers, where, and once again, I understand Black America has an ethnicity of its own, but once again, don't forget that you're African people too.
Absolutely.
I think there's a danger with what we're seeing with the technology right now, and so many of these bots who are trying to divide our people. So I just wanted to throw that disclaimer there, and that's also part of the reason why I call it the African Revolution in Haiti, because remember, as I mentioned before, it wasn't the Petit Blancs, it wasn't the Gens du Couleur, it was the African people who united themselves and got together and kicked out our enemies, and we can't forget that. In other words, it was the African Revolution in Haiti.
Absolutely. Much appreciated, brother. So our brother gives context for that particular assertion. So do check out the book, brothers and sisters. Do check out the book, and you can get it via the website that is currently in the chat. My brother, Kimoni, I want to thank you for being with us, my brother. I know that we'll have you back again at some point soon. And do let us know when you're in the midst of that part 2 or that revised edition, based upon all the new research that you've done. We will definitely profile it here, my brother. And we think we give thanks to you for all of your work on behalf of our people as a son of the soil of Haiti, walking in the footsteps of Bookman, of Dessalines, of Félicité, of Senit Belair, of Cecile Fatiman. My brother, we appreciate you, and we thank you for all of your efforts. I'm going to let you go. So as I close out the show, my brother, thank you for being here.
Oh, merci beaucoup. Thank you, family. I'll be before the
Give thanks, my brother. All right, brothers and sisters, that is our brother Kimoni Yaw Ajani, author of the book, The Afrikan Revolution in Ayiti, which you can find and acquire via the link in the chat right now, brothers and sisters. I wish to close the show, our Mosiah session today, which is centered around the imperative of nationhood, rereading the pronouncement from the course of African philosophy, which was rendered a few moments ago, brothers and sisters. In the Kimoni Revivalist movement, we are fond of referring to Message to the People, the course of African philosophy, as the final testament, the final testament of Papa Garvey. And hold on there. Let me make sure I can bring this up properly, because this is among the last set of writings, yes, that our Baba Garvey was able to render. It's a part of a course, literally a course that he ran from 1937 until his passing, training up the new cadre of leadership for the UNIA ACL amidst much of the attacks of the US and British government and attempts to protect the organization. One of the ways that he sought to do so was to train people in what he called the course of African philosophy. And so this, I'm made to understand, was a course that was intended to remain private. Yeah, it was intended to remain a private institution. But at some point, somebody got hold of the documentation and to publish it. And so that is why the elders of the UNIA ACL allowed Baba Tony Martin to publish the course, or 22 of the 44, I believe, lessons of the course. So not all of the course was actually written down. Yeah. So this is actually 22 of the, I believe, 44 lessons. And Papa Garvey says, as we repeat, brothers and sisters, under the subheading of Black nationalism, the culmination of all the efforts of the UNIA must end in Negro independent nationalism on the continent of Africa. That is to say, everything must contribute towards the final objective of having a powerful nation for the Negro race. Negro nationalism is necessary. It is political power and control. No race is free unless it has a nation of its own, a strong nation of its own system of government, its own order of society. Never give up this idea. Never give up this idea. Never give up this idea. Let no one persuade you against it. It is the only protection for your generation and your race. Hold on to the idea of an independent government and nation as long as other men have them. Never be satisfied to always live under the government of other people, because you will always be at their mercy. Never be satisfied to always live under the government of other people, because you will always be at their mercy. Visualize for yourself and your children and generations unborn your own king, emperor, president, your own government officials and administrators who look like you. God never could have intended to make you look as you look and are, and as you are, and make your king, president, emperor, or ruler of a different race than you. Such is the wisdom of the most eminent prophet and king, His Excellency Marcus Mosiah Garvey. We say hail to the power of the word, brothers and sisters. Hail to the power of the word, and salute to Kimbunga, the whirlwind, the energy of Papa Garvey. We are the whirlwind. And with that, we say unto thee, Garvey lives, Mosiah lives. Tendai Mwali. Be thankful unto the mother, father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai, Mudzimo, Mukolo. We give praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodie, African power and African liberation for all African people. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe.